friend had a colleague. Her name was Umi. Umi's house was having some problems, so she needed our help. My friend gave us Umi's address. We took a taxi to her house. Faye wondered why so many people knew about us. He didn't know that I almost opened a service for our job. Many people knew us because of my extensive connections. Faye said that I seemed like a good fit for the job. The first time he complimented me. But according to Faye, because his fate had decided, he will also face many dangerous things, so I should protect myself too. When we arrived to the right address, I rang the bell to call the owner. I took the initiative to make an appointment with her first. The door then slowly opened. All of a sudden, a cat rushed out from the house. The cat ran at a very fast speed. Because I didn't know that Umi's house had cats, both Faye and I were startled. The cat just jumped out and ran away very quickly. At the same time, a woman chased after the cat. I guessed she was probably Umi. After she saw us, she stopped chasing the cat and she invited us into the house. When I turned, I saw Faye standing still and looking after the cat. He had to wait for me to call him. He came back to his senses. After we went inside, Umi invited us to have a drink and introduced herself. Faye and I solved many cases together, so I knew his frankness. I immediately went to the main point and asked Umi what happened. According to Umi, inside her house there had lately been happening a lot of strange things. Faye asked her to tell all the details so that he could make good solutions. So Umi claimed that her house was haunted. I wondered why she was so sure. Her house must have had some strange phenomena. Umi started telling us. Her neighbor's baby went missing a few days ago. One day when the children gathered together to play hide and seek, her neighbor's boy disappeared. The boy's family was very worried. All children playing with him didn't know where the boy was. The family asked the local police to help them and everyone searched for him all night together. They scoured and searched all over the neighborhood, all over the street, but they couldn't find the boy. And several days later something strange happened. Therefore, Umi thought the boy had appeared in her house, because when he was alive he used to come and play with her cat. Since the boy went missing and he was rumored to be dead by the local police, there were strange things that began to happen in her house. In the middle of the night, Umi was sleeping. All of a sudden, she was woken up by a strange noise. The noise was coming from the living room. Umi tried to listen better. At first, she thought the noise was a cat and dog, but when she listened more closely, the noise was the sound of a child. The child was crying. Even though she was a little scared, despite of her curiosity, Umi also went to the living room to see what was wrong. And maybe Umi guessed right. The noise came from the living room. When she stepped out to the living room, the crying was clearer and louder. Despite being scared, Umi still tried to raise her voice to ask who was crying in her living room. In the living room, she heard the chair was emitting a cry. She slowly approached the chair, and as she walked, she asked if the noise was the boy or not. But when she was approaching, all of a sudden, from behind the chair, her cat ran out. At the same time, Umi only noticed her cat, and she held at the cat because the cat startled her. The following day, when Umi woke up to go to the toilet at night, she just came out of her bedroom. Umi was terrified by something on the ground. On the ground, there were countless wet footprints. The footprints clearly imprinted on the floor, and the footprints a child's footprint because the footprints were very small. Umi followed the footsteps as she went right to the kitchen. She saw that the refrigerator was opened. The food inside the refrigerator was ransacked as if someone had searched for food. Umi looked sad because she didn't know why the boy didn't come to his home, but instead haunted her house. The strange thing was Faye didn't ask about the missing boy. Faye just wanted to ask about Umi's cat. Faye wanted to know if the cat often ran out of the house or not. Umi said that since the boy went missing, about 2 days later the cat started going out and hiding more often. Faye stood up and asked Umi if he could go around the house to take a look. I also went behind Faye. We moved from Umi's bedroom. Then we continued to check the living room and the kitchen. Faye remained silent and didn't say anything. I asked Faye if he saw a ghost of the missing boy. Faye said that there was nothing unusual in the house. I was greatly surprised. Faye went to open the window to observe. He looked outside. No one could enter through the window. I also didn't understand what Faye was speculating in his head. All of a sudden, Faye turned to Umi and asked if the cat often climbed out of the window. Umi was also surprised by Faye's question. She clearly knew that the cat often went into hiding at this window. After Faye heard Umi's answer, Faye just smiled and said that we will find the answer tonight. Then Faye took out a small camera. Faye still refused to tell me his intentions. He just sat down to test the camera. His camera could connect to his phone. After we made arrangements, we said goodbye to Umi and said we would be back tonight. After we left Umi's house, Faye also said that he had his own business to deal with at the same time, so he told me to go home first. In the night, because I was so impatient, I arrived earlier than the scheduled time and I stood in front of Umi's house to wait for Faye. He was also late, so I waited for a long time. I was bitten by mosquitoes. When Faye came, Faye still didn't ask or cared about me, but he just stared at the phone. I was curious to see what he was looking at on his phone, but as soon as I looked at it, I saw in his phone was a picture of the inside of Umi's house. The scene was captured by Faye's camera. The direction of Faye's camera was the refrigerator in the kitchen. Just a moment later, Umi's cat suddenly appeared and went to the refrigerator. The cat stood up on his hind legs. The cat masterfully opened the refrigerator door with his front paw. After rummaging through the refrigerator for a long time, the cat found a bag of cookies and put the bag in his mouth, and then he left. Faye was tracking it for a while. The cat completely left the camera's view. Faye told me to look up and see a surprising thing, and Faye was right. The cat was climbing out of the window. The cat opened the window masterfully. Then the cat jumped down to the air conditioning fan below him. Then from the air conditioner, the cat jumped straight to the ground. While holding the bag of cookies, the cat ran past us. Immediately, Faye yelled for me to chase the cat. The cat ran very fast, jumping up to a tree. And then, the cat simply jumped over a high fence. Amazingly, Faye also ran and he moved quickly. Like the cat, he also jumped on the tree to gain momentum. Then Faye jumped over the fence and he disappeared.
Hey.
So I thought I would climb the electric pole and try to climb over the fence, but I just climbed a little bit, as I was discovered by the security guard, who was patrolling around. They thought I was a thief, so they arrested me, even though I explained that I was hunting ghosts. The more I talked, the more they didn't believe me. So they tied me up and took me to the police station. After that, I couldn't witness it with my own eyes, so I heard the story from Faye. He climbed over the fence and caught up with the cat. The cat ran very fast and started to enter the dilapidated construction site. Faye saw a hole underneath the rubble. The hole looked like a well. Faye understood the problem and he immediately called the police to come and inspect the well. The police quickly arrived and Faye started explaining the whole thing to the police officers. Finally, they and Faye carried the broken concrete and bricks. They saw underneath the rubble was a deep well, and more amazingly, they saw the boy and Umi's cat underneath the well. The boy had been missing for a week. The boy seemed to be still alive. The boy was surrounded by crumbs and food, and the food was all brought by the cat. The boy was rescued and taken to the hospital immediately. We also told the story to Umi. She was very happy to have such a good cat. After we finished all, we also left. Although everything was clear, I still had many questions. I asked them. How did you know that everything was done by the cat? Faye said that when he observed the refrigerator door and the whole window, he saw traces of the cat's claws. I kept wondering, even so, why Umi saw the crying and the footprints in her house. Faye said that the crying may be the cat imitating the boy's voice, and the footprints were in Umi's house because there were water in the well. The cat's paws got wet and entered the house. In the light of the evening, perhaps Umi was too frightened to see the footprints of a cat. Faye said that cats were the most instinctive species, so shamans could rely on cats to connect with the living dead. After Umi's case, I had a new perspective on Faye. He was also very practical and scientific in some situations, so I admired Faye even more, and I continued to follow him. I would ask him to show me some ghost subjugation techniques, but he still rejected me. Maybe I didn't have qualities like Faye. If so, I will follow him for the rest of my life. We were walking to a busy intersection when it happened. I continued to pursue Faye in order to persuade him to allow me to join the sect, but he always declined. He said that his master admitted the disciples very harshly and strictly, and I did not meet the criteria. I'm still not satisfied and kept asking about the criteria, whether they were wealthy, talented, or something else. Faye maintained his strange smile and walked away, paying no attention to me, but perhaps I was too annoying, so he responded, "The most important criterion one's handsomeness." I thought to myself and touched my face. I thought I was handsome as well. I told Faye that if I was very handsome, I would probably be accepted. Faye appeared to have no opinion on me. So in the end, what was the most important criterion? Faye just said that the beauty was my value. It didn't matter whether I was handsome or not. During his conversation, he abruptly turned his head to look behind him as if he was following someone. I was also perplexed, so I inquired as to what had occurred, and I turned to look in the direction reflexively. It was a beautiful girl. Was it possible that Faye had a preference for beautiful girls? However, according to Faye, she was being followed by a ghost. According to Faye's description, the ghost was black and stuck to the girl's back. It didn't have a definite shape, it simply appeared to be black smoke. With these words, Faye immediately followed the girl to see how things were going. So we began following her, walking like stalkers. I told Faye following along her in the manner was not a good idea. According to Faye, it appeared that something strange was about to happen, but they didn't know when. So they had to follow along to observe. According to Faye, the strange thing might endanger the girl's life, but we couldn't intervene for the time being. All of a sudden, the girl rushed into the street as if she had been shoved. A truck was approaching from below, and the situation was extremely dangerous. Faye immediately rushed towards the girl, and fortunately he was able to cling to her shirt, so it allowed him to hold her, avoiding a terrible accident. The car was moving so fast that it didn't have time to brake or turn around, but it kept going. Perhaps the driver was afraid of getting into trouble. Faye inquired about the girl's situation. She appeared very panicked at the time. Her face was pale and she could not be calmed down. After a few moments of calm, the girl was able to tell Faye that she was fine. Faye immediately went right to the point, asking her how many times it had happened. The girl was taken aback because Faye seemed to know everything. She began to be wary of us, owing to the fact that we were strangers anyway. It was when I demonstrated my eloquence by briefly introducing Faye and stating that he saw an evil spirit following her. She reflexively turned back to look, but obviously she couldn't see anything. I started persuading her to tell us everything she was going through. After that, I went to a tea shop so she could calm down and we would try to help her. She began to recount after taking a few sips of water and gradually calming herself down. According to the girl, it was the third time in the week when she had unexpectedly fallen down the stairs, sometimes with a flower pot on top of her falling too. Fortunately, she was able to escape each time. "Did you have a quarrel with anyone, or did anything strange happen during the time?" Faye seriously asked the girl. She became quiet for a while, looking sad and thoughtful. She finally said that her boyfriend had recently died in a traffic accident while on his way to meet her. Faye continued to ask her if she felt like someone was following her, because it was possible that her boyfriend was following her. After hearing the questions, the girl agreed to respond right away because she felt that everything she had recently met agreed with what Faye said. Recently, whenever she went out at night, she had the sensation that someone was walking right behind her, but when she turned around, she saw no one. It was the same thing when she went to bed at night. She could clearly feel someone lying next to her and everything felt so real, but when she looked back, she didn't see anyone. Faye continued to ask, did the other people around her have anything strange? The girl seemed thoughtful and then replied that her boyfriend's mother came to visit her last week. I felt it was not unusual and it didn't match Faye's question, so I told her to tell us more about the story. She showed a sad face, slowly picked up a glass of water to drink, and stated that her boyfriend's mother hated her and believed she murdered her child. I began to be unexpected by the incident. The girl went on to say that while leaving work, her boyfriend was on his way to meet her, but didn't come home first, and he was then hit by a car. As a result, his mother began to place all of the blame on the girl. What was stranger, his mother called her, cursing and terrorizing her for a while after her son's death, but not long ago she unexpectedly came to visit her. In the day, she arrived with a cheerful expression on her face without cursing or showing any disgrace. The girl was taken aback and asked what was wrong, but she simply told her to pay her a visit and see if there were any of her son's belongings left over and she would bring them back. But instead of sitting in the living room, she went straight to the girl's bedroom and abruptly said the blankets and pillows were messy, so she wanted to help her arrange them neatly. Just as the girl was about to stop her, she diverted her attention by asking the girl to get her a glass of water. Strangely, when she went to get water and returned to give it to her, she said that she was busy and quickly left. When she left, her expression changed. She was no longer as happy as she had been, and her mouth was still muttering something strange. After hearing the story, I also knew that his mother did something in her room without explanation from Faye. Faye asked the girl to take us to her room so that Faye could take a closer look and help her. I was not sure if it was due to psychological effects, but when I entered the room it felt a little cold and gloomy. Then I didn't know what to do next, so I waited for Faye to finish observing and tell me. After looking around the room for a while, he stared at the mattress and asked me to raise it. Of course I would do the heavy lifting, I was always the one to do it. When I lifted the mattress, he began to bend down to look beneath it, and obviously there was something strange. Underneath the mattress, there was a black paper puppet. Faye removed the puppet from the mattress and claimed that it was the source of the recent strange occurrences. Faye looked at the puppet and explained to us.
This type of puppet would have many different colors and different ways of doing damage. The black figure was the most ferocious and evil. It would follow and harm the affected person until they died in the most painful way possible, at which point it would stop.
After finishing saying this, Faye clamped the puppet between two fingers, then flipped it over and over again while reciting incantations with his mouth, and the puppet caught fire without any intervention. When the puppet caught fire, the girl let out a loud scream and hugged her hand. I also heard panic and asked the girl what was going on. She said it felt like burning and it was very hot on her back. Faye reassured the girl, saying that everything had been resolved and she would no longer be in danger. After that, We said goodbye to the girl and left. I also planned to charge the girl a fee, but was stopped by Faye. I still wondered why Faye refused to let me charge the girl. Faye simply smiled and said helping her was a charm. Couldn't be charged. There was a deceased member of her family who did many good deeds while alive, so the person helped her avoid all these disasters as well as let her meet Faye. Faye went straight out to catch a taxi. Just a moment ago, he asked the girl for the address of his boyfriend's house. I was not sure what he was planning to do. I kept following and he said he would come take a look. But whoever the bad guy was, they should be punished a little. According to the address, we also reached the house of her deceased boyfriend. Walking along the road to find the address of the house, all of a sudden we saw a sight which made us change our mind. On the chair in front of her boyfriend's house, there was an elderly woman sitting. Her hair messy and her face was lifeless. She appeared to be the mother of the deceased boyfriend, and now she was no longer awake, as Faye had also turned away. I was curious as to why Faye didn't approach her and try to talk to her, but Faye believed she was receiving the retribution she deserved for her actions. I didn't think we should just leave her alone. She should have received more appropriate punishment for nearly killing the innocent girl. Faye simply laughed and stated that in the world, the cause and effects were infinite. I couldn't fully understand this. It was not always when people attempted to punish each other, which it was referred to as retribution. That day, I had an important appointment with Faye. Therefore, in the early morning, I rushed to the meeting place. I tried to convince Faye to follow me to a relative's house to solve some problems. Faye hastily refused my offer. He used the excuse that he had an important appointment with a client today and couldn't come with me. Seeing Faye about to leave, I rushed to the front of him, urgently pleading. I told Faye that if things were delayed, murder would happen. After listening, even though Faye felt a little uncomfortable in his heart, he reluctantly agreed to follow me. As soon as I saw Faye nod, I quickly took out 2 bus tickets that I had prepared in advance. After that, I took Faye to the parking lot, preparing to hit the road on the first bus of the day. While preparing to board the bus, I saw Faye busy handling the rest of his work. He talked to the customers to delay important appointments and reschedule the store's work. Finally, the 2 of us got on the bus and departed for my aunt's house. Along the way, I felt guilty about Faye having to cancel important appointments just to help me, but Faye said he could arrange it and I needn't to worry. Seeing Faye's kindness, I promised to treat him to a worthy meal as a thank you. Faye laughed and took a sip of water and asked me the whole story. The story began with my relationship with this relative. Actually, we were not close, but because of my blood, I couldn't ignore it. Faye continued to ask and I went straight to the topic my aunt was having. I told Faye that my aunt was suffering from a strange disease. Her neck suddenly became crooked after a night. Faye propped his chin, looked out the window and asked if I took my aunt to the hospital for a checkup. So I told Faye that the family took her to be checked everywhere but couldn't find the disease. Faye didn't say anything after listening to me, just told me to wake him up when we got there. After that, both Faye and I took a long nap on the bus. After a few hours on the bus, Faye and I finally arrived. We got out of the bus and walked down the road leading to our aunt's house.
Hey.
In the distance, I caught sight of a familiar man running over to greet the 2 of us. I introduced Faye to my cousin, the aunt's son. After that, the 3 of us started greeting and getting to know each other and went home. My aunt's small house was located at the end of the road, leading into a dense forest. I took Faye inside and asked him if he felt anything unusual around. Faye just shook his head. At this point I was surprised because my aunt said that her disease was caused by her father's spirit. I laid Faye into the room to meet my aunt. Since being sick, she didn't seem to go out. In the middle of the room, my aunt said hello with her neck tilted to the side. Due to the disease that directly affected the spine, now my aunt couldn't sit up straight like a normal person. Faye listened to my aunt talking about her condition and then asked my aunt about her father's spirit. She said that she kept dreaming about her late father for a week, and since then, her neck had become like this. My uncle sat next to me, just as surprised as we were. My aunt took this opportunity to recount the words that her father said in the dream. When my uncle heard it, he was even more surprised. Uncle said right at her father's grave, how could there be a big tree branch that would press on her father's grave like that? Faye felt that the story seemed serious, so he told my uncle to take him and me to her father's grave to check. My uncle also tried to join us outside the grave buried in the backyard of the house. This garden was the burial place of deceased relatives in the family. Faye and I stood in front of her father's grave, bowing politely. After that, Faye and I took a walk around the grounds to check. Faye's face was also very pensive at that time. Faye remained silent, his eyes revealing the familiar seriousness. He looked around in every nook and cranny. After a moment of tension, Faye turned to me and said,
"Could you lend me your shoulder?"
I was surprised and confused after hearing that, but before I could say anything, Faye jumped on my shoulder and stood on top of it. He glanced in the direction of the grave and gave a meaningful smile. After knowing the exact problem to be solved, Faye hurriedly jumped down. I brushed the dust off my shoulders and asked Faye in the end, "What's up with this?" I looked at Faye's serious face and heard every word he said with certainty. He confirmed the fact that there was a tree on her father's grave. I already knew Faye's ability, but because I was curious, I wanted Faye to prove to me that what he said was true. Faye struggled for a while and then took out a handful of coins from his pocket. After that, Faye went to the aunt's father's grave and plucked small branches around it. In the end, Faye put the coins on these branches and told me to wait and see the results. I watched nervously for a while. Then, a strange phenomenon happened at the aunt's father's grave. My uncle and I were also amazed at this mysterious spiritual phenomenon. In front of the grave, the coins suddenly moved, floating in the air. Not only that, they flew higher and higher as proof that her father was still here. My uncle woke up to Faye and asked Faye what was up with this. Faye immediately recounted what he had felt. Most likely a large tree branch accidentally fell on the aunt's father's grave, penetrated the soil and pressed on the lid of the coffin. When my uncle heard it, he worriedly asked Faye,
"Oh no, oh my god, so what should I do now?"
Faye reassured my uncle and told him not to worry. They just needed to dig up the top layer of soil and remove the broken branch. My uncle then also asked Faye when the right time to dig a grave was. I said it was the best to do it today with my aunt's health situation like this. After listening to me and getting Faye's confirmation, my uncle immediately called a few young men to help dig the grave. My uncle and some young people in the village who were on the land and started digging up the grave in only the afternoon. After 1 hour, the top layer of soil was plowed out, revealing the wooden coffin lying inside. We stood around the grave, gazing at the coffin. Everyone was surprised to see a large wooden branch lying on top of the coffin. Based on the size of the branch, anyone could get that this was a perennial tree branch and accidentally fell right at her father's neck. My uncle then took out a wooden branch, intending to bring it home to make firewood in the house, but Faye quickly stopped it. Faye came in front of my uncle. His eyes were cold. Faye told my uncle not to damage his branch of the tree and also not to leave it in the house because it had yin kui. My aunt and uncle should take this branch to an empty lot and burn it. They shouldn't use it as firewood and remember to burn it on the night of the full moon. In order to make the bus home in time, we didn't stay but said goodbye to our aunt's family to leave. Once we were on the bus, my aunt called me and told me the good news that she was cured. She thanked Faye and me. Faye was still very cold. He leaned back in his chair calmly, even though I was chirpingly recounting my phone conversation with my aunt. Faye sat with his eyes closed, repeating my pledge to the sumptuous meal that I promised to treat him as thanks. I laughed loudly, confidently announcing that I would treat him to a hearty meal. Then I invited him to visit my aunt in my hometown in his free time to enjoy the food my aunt cooked. While happily chatting, the driver sitting above turned down and held at me. He asked me to keep order and not to make noise to disturb others. His attitude drove me crazy. I strained my neck to argue with him. It wasn't until he said he would leave me on the road that I would shut up.